This podcast may contain adult themes.
This podcast is for entertainment purposes only.
The views and opinions in this podcast are expressly our own.
When I get to the workplace, I like to fuck shit up.
Honestly, every time I try to do something fun or exciting, you make it not that way.
Hey, are you tired of toxic workplaces and the negativity that comes with them?
We hear you, and we're here to shake things up. Welcome to Let's Break Up Toxic Workplace Stories, the podcast that's all about breaking up with workplace toxicity.
I'm Nicola, and I'm here with my co-host Gina. Together, we're going to explore real-life experiences of workplace toxicity and offer a sense of encouragement and unity.
That's right. We're tackling the tough topic of negativity in the workplace.
So join us each week as we explore the various forms of toxicity in the workplace. We'll be interviewing guests to share their experiences and offer practical solutions for dealing with workplace toxicity.
Let's Break Up is quickly becoming the go-to source for anyone looking to share and then ditch the drama and help you break up with those toxic workplaces. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell all your friends.
In this week's episode,
honestly, we really need people to like, subscribe, and comment. Even if you don't want to comment, just like and subscribe.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Give us a rating, because it's going to really help us, because I think we've talked about this before, but we did not realize quite how much work this would be. And while we're having fun,
it's still a lot of work.
It's still a lot of time and effort. And I think, we're both single moms, and we both have full-time jobs, in addition to other streams of income that we do have to manage. So it would just really be so helpful for us. You don't have to write anything. Just give us a star rating. It helps, and subscribe
and then
to
say,
us.
Hey.
Because I know I'm tired. I know Nicola's tired. We're all kind of burning the candle at both ends. Say, help.
You know what? I would absolutely use any financing or monetary gain from this just to get someone to edit the videos.
It wouldn't even go into our pockets. It would go to somebody, to a sound engineer who actually knows what they're doing, which only means that the podcast quality will be even
tenfold better. Yeah,
a million times better. I mean, you're doing a good job, but you're not a trained sound. You're not a trained sound engineer. You're just kind of doing it the best you can. Which I think is
with what I got.
Yeah, and it's way better than anything I could ever do. Hi, Stan.
Hey, good morning and good afternoon.
How are you? How is your day been going so far?
So far, so good. I got everything done today that I wanted to get done, and then I'm excited to do this, and I've been jotting down a few more stories to share during our episode.
Yay! So, Stan, why don't you give us a little introduction as to who you are and why you thought it would be either A, a good thing, or B, a fun time to come on our podcast while Nicola gets ready for work.
Sure. Okay. Well, Stan Kimmer, and I am now the president and founder of Total Engagement Consulting by Kimmer. But before I started my company, I spent 31 years working in corporate America for a very large company. And I've had some really good experiences. About 85 or 90% of my experience at work has been good, but I've also had those horrible managers that have created a toxic environment. So I thought it'd be really fun to share some time with you and talk about, how managers and executive leaders can actually contribute and cause a toxic environment, and also how good leaders can create a wonderful environment. And then I retired 12 years ago after 31 years and formed my own consultancy around diversity, equity, and inclusion and career development. And a lot of times that also ties to building inclusive workplace cultures and healthy workplace cultures. So I love
Sure.
this area of discussion.
Okay. And can you just tell us like what industry you were in? Were you in like technology, finance? What was it?
Technology.
All right, I was right the first time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I worked in every job that in the large company. I worked in finance, sales, marketing, HR. So it's fun to have like a broad experience.
Yeah, of course. All right. So, why don't you give us a couple of stories that demonstrate a shitty boss?
Okay, we'll start with that. And then also I can talk about bad executive leadership, but
Well, any of
probably
that, all of
you
that.
do. Okay,
Give us some of that,
okay,
and then
good.
we'll end it with the good stuff that's happened to you, so everyone feels positive.
Okay, good. I'll tell you 3 stories.
Okay.
2 will be about individual managers, and then 1 will be about collective executive leadership. But probably
I'm
the
here for
worst,
this.
yeah, the worst time I had was with a manager who basically anything I did was not good enough for her. That everything was criticized and torn apart. And there was one time when the senior leader of our whole function, it's like my boss's 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 boss,
Mhm.
wanted me to create a online metrics and measurement system so he could go online and look at each of his direct reports and their major metrics that he was tracking, and that he can go
Okay.
on and look anytime he wanted. And so he said, can
Makes
you get
sense.
this done in a month? And I said, sure. And then he said, can you show me a prototype in 3 days? And uh, I prepared a prototype, and I took it to my manager, and she said, this thing is a piece of shit. But there was no time to do anything with it because the meeting with the big boss was in 2 hours. So we brought it in, and I showed him where I was going with the prototype, and he said, this is beautiful. It's exactly what I was looking for. And this happened over and over again. The senior leadership in my group thought I did great work and loved everything I did, but my immediate manager did nothing but criticize and cut down every single thing I did. And she even lowered my performance evaluation, which
What?
impacted, my
Why?
year-end bonus.
Yeah, why would okay, so a couple questions. What do you
Here.
think the psychology behind that? None of us are psychologists or psychiatrists or therapists of any kind, but in your own opinion, Stan, why do you think she was doing that? Do you think maybe she felt threatened by you?
She might have felt threatened by me, but the thing is I wanted to be a real loyal employee, and that if I do good things, that it makes her look good too. So it wouldn't make
course.
sense. But
So
she
why
kind
do
of
you think she was that way towards you? Why do you think she was kind of
Yeah.
being negative
when,
towards you?
well, actually, when several people approached her, she tried to make excuses. Like she said, her parents weren't very loving and caring when she was growing up, and she
Wait a second.
tried.
Wait a second.
Wait,
Hold
you're
on,
not a
Stan.
child.
Time out. So her behavior, let me just understand so our listeners can understand. Her behavior towards you made other people kind of say, wait, what's going on here? Why are you so put in whatever word, mean, nasty to Stan? And her response was she had a traumatic childhood.
Yeah.
She had no love.
That was, yes. And what's interesting is she only had 2 direct reports. She had me, and I had a team of like 8, and she had another manager who had a team of 8. And I lasted 6 months. He only lasted 3 months longer. So she drove both of her direct report managers away with her awful style of management.
Because she had a traumatic childhood. I would like to just point out that most people do have, especially like, our generation, like I'm 43, you're not in my generation, but my parents were in your generation.
Right.
So it's like
Everybody's got trauma.
we all, especially, I feel like it's only like now starting to hopefully get a little bit better. Nicola and I were just talking about it before you came on, of breaking those generational curses in parenting. But I feel like at that point in time, because what was this, like the 80s?
Actually, it was like this bad experience was in the early 90s.
Okay. So
So,
yeah.
Still
So
in that space of weirdness.
it's all in that same kind of time frame. And it's like, we all fucking had traumatic childhood.
I love it.
Like, this
Yes.
is not an excuse. Hello, like, you don't bring your childhood to work with you.
And you are not children either. So who gives a fuck if she didn't have a loving childhood? It doesn't mean she treats you like shit.
Yeah. And then, she, because she was trying to make excuses like, oh, I'm not going to be a nurturing manager who cares about her people.
Which
that
is
was kind of
fine.
her-
That's a style, but don't like come gunning for. So did she do this I'm curious, did she do the like demotion or what I forget the word you called it with your evaluation? Did she lower both of your evaluations, yourself and the other manager, or just yours?
Well, I don't know if she lowered the other manager or not, but he was even more experienced than me. He was an older gentleman who had like 30 years of management experience, and he thought maybe he could outlast her. And he just got totally frustrated too, that even though he knew what he was doing as an experienced manager, she would question everything he did, and we would share and compare notes. And, he was hoping to, kind of survive, but he just had it after a while too. So
I mean, I
he
think with
lasted 9 months.
experience, yeah, like I think with experience, it either gives you a lot more patience, or it gets you to the point where you're like, I don't need to fucking deal with this. I know what I'm doing. I don't need someone questioning me all the time. So I think it can go one of two ways, and they're both like kind of an extreme. Well, she sounds like she sucks. Do you know what happened to her?
Can I ask maybe a little bit of a controversial question? What did she dislike you because you have a different sexual orientation?
That might have been part of it, because at that time I was very active as an LGBT leader in the workplace.
And in the 90s, that would have been like, ooh, hot button topic.
It still wasn't totally normal yet. Yeah.
But she didn't really mention it. And
of course you're not going to mention it, Stan. You're too nice, because that will be like discrimination. She's probably at least smart enough to be like, I can't mention that I don't like him because he has this different sexual orientation.
Oh, no, not the gays. I don't want to catch it. Yeah, please. She's coming in.
Don't catch the gay.
Yeah. And actually, you asked about what might have happened with her. I might need to check in with some of my old employees, because what happened is, after this other gentleman and I kind of left her,
jump shipped, yeah.
Then all of these, I had a team of 8, and then he had a team of 8. Like, I think all 16 ended up reporting to her directly, because she really couldn't, because she couldn't find anybody who would, kind of manage half the group.
Yeah. All right. What is
like, woof.
Yeah. I mean, we're only one story in, and woof.
Yeah.
All right. What's your next story? Hit us with it.
The next story, well, actually, it was kind of interesting, because he was, I had to joke about him too, because everybody else in the area could not stand him. But this was very early in my career. And when he first met me, I always looked young for my age. So I was like a staff level person that you usually get promoted to that level when you're like 28 or 29. And I probably looked about 23. And the first thing he said was, when he became a manager, you're a little bit young to be a staff person. And then he kind of hinted that he was the best employee that IBM ever had, and that no one would ever get promoted faster than him. So it's almost like he was the prototype. And
I'm sorry. I didn't know you had like.
Oh my God! It's the Kindle of technology.
Yeah, or like I didn't know you had like David's Michelangelo working for you.
Amazing! What a treat!
I mean,
so anyway, I'm going to mention his last name because I know he's deceased by now, but his last name was Harp, and so we called him Harpies. Because that's what everybody called him behind his
Harpies?
back. Yeah. And he would smoke. This is when smoking was allowed in the office. This is when smoking would be allowed in your offices.
Yeah,
oh my God, that was my worst. That was my worst era ever.
Okay. he would lean back in his chair and his shirt would like come up and you could see his belly and his cigarette ashes would like fall on his belly. I mean, it was
Ugh!
disgusting.
Was he overweight?
Slightly. I mean, he was pretty medium, but he just had a big belly.
So I like to have a full visual. That's why I ask. Like, I like to have the visual in my
I'm
head
just
of like,
seeing like a little bit of like a hairy stomach sticking out of the shirt,
and like,
and then the ashes are like getting
like
caught
the
in the hair.
buttons,
Yes,
the buttons
but
are straining a little bit,
Yeah.
and he's like,
Yes, you got it. But with this manager, every time I did really good work, he took total credit. Now, the manager before him, every time I did good work and it would get praised, he would say, well, my guy Stan did this, and he would always pass on credit. But
right,
this particular manager would always take all full credit. And then the times where he screwed up, he would blame me for
of
his
course.
own mess ups.
Ooh, of
Not
course.
not shocking. If someone's gonna be like two-faced like that, they're gonna do it in both directions.
Well,
So
we spoke
And
to
then the
someone
worst
on
thing
Friday.
he did, it was one horrible experience as we're working on a project and he knew that I had vacation scheduled. I had a flight. I think I was going to Mexico.
okay.
And he made me stay in the office and he would not let me leave. And I ended up missing my flight. So
Did you get to go
I
to
scheduled-
Mexico eventually?
Yes, but it took me 3 flights. I missed 2 flights. Then I came in the next day in the office. Well, I might as well work since I missed my flight and I'll take it the
Yeah.
next day. And he had me late again and I missed it a second time. So, just total
Did he reimburse you?
inconsideration for, me as a person.
So he's dead now, right? We know he's dead.
Oh, and here's one other thing he did. So I basically let it be known that, I'm not happy reporting to you. I'd like to like move to a new job. And so I had a manager who wanted me to come work for him.
Mhm.
And he called up Harp and said, I really would like Stan to work for you. And I told Harp that I'd love to go work in that job. And Harp actually told him that I was not interested. And that got back to me. So he actually lied.
Okay. My same question. Why do you think he was doing this to you?
I think he could have been totally unaware that he did this. He might,
Really?
or
Yeah,
maybe
I
he
think
just
you're
didn't
too
like the fact
nice.
that, or maybe he didn't like the fact that I got promoted to the level that I got to quicker than he got to that level.
It's probably more like that because it's more when people, in my opinion, when people react in such like ridiculous manners, the way Fat Man Harp was, I feel like it's not really personal to you. It says more about them. So he probably felt, his ego was bruised because he was no longer the prototype.
And the interesting thing is with both of these cases, it wasn't like I couldn't stand this person and everybody else thought they were great. It's everybody else fully agreed that this manager is horrible. In both cases, I wasn't like an outlier. It was everyone else felt that way.
Yeah. Whereas
So
like where
you
Nicola
went
and
to
I
be-
met, I thought that our CEO was insane and didn't know what the fuck she was doing, and I was the outlier.
Ooh.
No, well,
'Cause
you weren't
she-
the outlier. I was the outlier too because I agreed with you. It's just that no one ever spoke about it.
No
And
one
the
spoke
reason
about
why
it.
is probably everybody else wanted to kiss the CEO's ass
That's it.
instead of
Exactly.
speaking out. See, that was the, kind of like, oh yeah, they're all going to, tell her whatever she wants to hear, where you two might would be honest. And, because they're kissing her ass, they're not going to get in the boat with you. But both of
towards
these
the-
managers were not that high level.
Right. And towards the end, I started saying like, this is not with our CEO where Nicola and I met. I would say like, she doesn't know what she's doing. Like I had to hold my tongue. Like when I heard her say, I'm okay taking a total loss on this project. Like in
Ooh.
what world does a business person
Say we're
okay a
taking
loss?
Yep.
That I'm okay losing money on this? Where I still to this day, it like renders me speechless. Like the worst case scenario is you break even. is still, in my opinion, a loss. Like, you always want to profit. Of course, there are going to be times where you take losses. Of course, there will be time, that are unforeseen. But my point is that she knew we weren't ready to do something, and she was going to do it anyway, being okay to take a loss.
Insanity.
Instead of waiting another 3 to 6 months, making sure everything was correct and lowering the chance of having any loss.
Yeah. Well, maybe she knew that, hey, if there was a loss, that she could find people to blame.
No.
Yeah, I'm okay taking a loss because, hey, if there's a loss, I'm going to blame other people for it.
Yeah, but it comes out in the bottom line because it's all revenue. It's all money. So,
Or,
like,
who
she's
knows?
only,
Maybe
it's only going to hurt her and her business and her profit.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, so let's circle back all the way back to Stanaruni. Tell us a little bit more about, what I'm curious to know though, for those first two stories, had you seen any red flags prior to kind of the key parts of the story?
in the first case, not really. The second case, I did see some red flags because, Harp had just moved to this location to take the job and was having a house built. And I'd be in his office and I would see how he was like belittling his wife, because she was like there meeting with the builders and, making decisions. And he was like treating her like she couldn't do it, that he had to like be there for every decision, and I saw the way she was like almost minimizing her, because I'm like, gosh, if I had a wife, I'd let her go ahead and decide all this house stuff while I'm at
I'd
work.
be like, great,
But
go do it.
yeah,
I'm busy at work.
But,
Yeah.
but
Go do your make work, woman.
He'd be sitting there smoking his cigarette with his belly showing, belittling his wife, and I'd be there.
And was this also in the early 90s?
No, this was in the early 80s.
Okay. So not excusable, but I think the behavior back then was probably more acceptable of a man belittling their wife, even though it's completely not okay at any point in time. But I think there was still like very traditional roles in the early 80s. Because like my mom stayed home. I grew up in the 80s. My mom stayed home. My dad went to work, and it was basically like my dad's way or the highway. He had the budget. It was very traditional. It wasn't like there was nothing untoward about it, but he just the roles were super traditional. But still, why would you do that in front of your employees, your direct reports?
That's so
because you're sitting in the office having a half-hour meeting, and he's going to be calling his wife every 20 minutes or 15 minutes, talking to her about the latest building thing. So it's like you talk for 10 minutes, then he talks to his wife, then you talk. Yeah, he kind of.
That's so inappropriate. You don't need to know. Do you think that was a way of like him trying to belittle you? Like, oh, my wife is doing this. Like, we're building our dream home.
Oh my God.
No, you don't think so? I wouldn't put it past him with his buttons straining across his big fat belly.
But I love the way you think, because sometimes I'm a little bit too Pollyannish, like, everyone's out here with such good, pure motives. And sometimes that gets me in trouble.
Yeah, I think it was a way of belittling you. If he could belittle his wife.
It was his way of absolutely coming after you as well.
Yeah, he was absolutely belittling you, and maybe it didn't land because you're much too nice of a person,
and also probably smarter.
Yes, but I think there was an ulterior motive there, because really, if he just wanted to talk to you about the work thing, he would tell his secretary, hold my calls. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like my dad used to work for the same company, and we would, even me as his child and my mom we'd still have to go through the secretary. There was a layer of defense. So
can we just pause here for a second and remind people that if this podcast is something you enjoy, we would love to hear from you.
You can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Let's break up toxic workplace stories.
Sharing and subscribing really helps us feel validated.
And in both
Ditto.
cases, I escaped both those managers. That
So
was
that's
one of
the upside.
Yeah, that's the upside of a very large company. Like if you're working like for an entrepreneur or just, it's like 10 people, there's like no place to go unless you quit.
Yeah, there.
But with a
Right.
very, very
Yep.
large company, you can go to another division, you can go to another location.
Yeah.
There's always ways of getting away from that boss from hell.
All right. So what is I still have the
Boring.
visual of the cigarettes with the straining buttons. Okay, what is your next
Sure.
toxic
The
workplace
next one
story?
deals with executive leadership, because not only can a individual manager create a toxic environment for their department, senior leader. So we had actually a division, we had 3,000 employees. And the general manager who had it first, he was very inspirational. He listened to everybody's voice. He was a very positive leader. And then when he moved in, they brought in a new leader who really just didn't really have a good leadership style. And he would basically do whatever the senior executives asked. So the senior executives saying, we're going through some financial crushes. We need to reduce the headcount 15%. And initially he said, okay, we're going to lay off 15% of people, but then we're going to try to make some processes more efficient. And we're going to also analyze what is the 15% least valuable work we're doing and not do it anymore. So I'm saying I'm fine with that. We can
That
let go
sounds
of some people.
That sounds
Legit.
reasonable.
reasonable.
So
Yeah.
then 2 days after the layoff, he comes back and says, I'm sorry, but you had to figure out how to do all the stuff you used to be doing.
Okay,
now
so
everybody,
he wanted, instead of getting rid of the least valuable 15% of the work you're doing, he's now saying you still got to do that.
right. Then he did it again the next year. So now we're down 30% and we're doing all the same work. And we have the highest percentage of people in the hospital from nervous breakdown and exhaustion because everybody's working 80 hours a week. And then and by the way, we had one of the highest morale of the units under that former executive. We were the lowest morale unit in the company.
I believe it.
So HR is going to call a task force, and I was a junior executive at that time. And they called a task force of all like the junior executives to say, we need to figure out why our morale is so low. And I shared exactly why. And everybody else was like messaging me saying, Stan, you're correct, but we can't speak out because if we speak out, we're the next ones laid off. And I was like, I have no children. My mortgage is paid off. I could care less if they fire me. So
you
I'm
were
gonna
living
speak
the
out and-
dream, Stan. You were living the
Oh my
fucking
God, you
dream.
used the 80s and 90s to your advantage. I love you right now.
So I was like speaking out and they were all supporting me. And then HR said, oh, we can't tell the executives that. And I'm like, it's the truth. And
Then
it's
why
like,
ask
oh,
me
we
if you
need
can't
to
tell
make up
people?
some, I'm like, we need to make up something to, to placate them. I'm like, no, you need to tell them the truth. Hey, we laid off 30% of the people. We're all trying to do the same work. You're working us to the bone with exhaustion. This is not right. The morale is totally in the gutter. These are the reasons why. All my other peer executives are agreeing with me, but they're afraid to speak out. And HR is like, we can't tell them that. And that's so, yeah.
But what does
I
that
ended up-
say about the company culture, that it's like built on fear, right? Under
Yeah.
these new like executive regime, it's like everyone's just fearful, just living in
Yeah.
fear. I mean, that's no place to go. That's like,
awful. Yeah.
that's so terrible. And then, so I just want to point this out because this happened when, in like the 90s, what you just described.
No, now we're talking about 2008.
So now
Okay.
we've barely scraped through,
The 80s and 90s.
the millennium.
Yeah.
Millennium in a
Right.
technology company, which was stressful enough for, I think, everybody. And now we're like cruising on in to what was the big deals in 2008? SARS was a big deal in 2008. There were a couple of weird things happening in 2008.
I have no idea. But what I can say, and what my point was asking when it happened, is so now you have all these fancy buzzwords for what you're describing. And I hate buzzwords, but what you just described, Stan, is quiet hiring, where
Oh no, get off the grass. Get off
Okay.
the fucking grass. Yep.
no, but it's true.
Learned about it. Doesn't
No,
mean
but-
you can use it.
Mhm.
But is that not what Stan just described?
It is a little bit.
Okay.
So tell me
So
what,
I
tell
don't
me what
believe
client
in the-
hiring is. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe in these buzzwords, but essentially what it is, it's like they're giving you the workload of 2 or 3 other employees without acknowledging it. They're like, oh, you just have
Right.
to do this project as well. Oh, you have to do this as well. Not giving you any additional pay, not, so it's like
Oh.
you're doing the work of 2 other people and your normal work. So in today's
Yeah.
day and age, because everything needs to have a label, that's called quiet hiring.
Got it.
We don't like labels here, so basically what it is, because we just like to talk in like regular words, you are doing the work of 2 or 3 additional employees on top of your own work.
But what's kind of cool, this is kind of a fun, kind of fun, is that there's like one super senior leader who was like pushing these layoffs, and he was very like, I don't care. Let's just work people to the bone until they fall of exhaustion. I can say a bad word. I don't give a fuck what we do to our people.
How
And-
terrible! That's
But here's the
terrible.
interesting thing. So basically what happened is he ended up getting arrested for insider trading. And when he was convicted, he was
Yes.
before okay, so now he's before the judge and it's sentencing time and he gets prison time. And he goes to the judge and he says, my daughter is now a senior in high school. Can you at least maybe hold off me going to prison until after she graduates? And the judge basically said, you showed no mercy for your employees when you were a senior executive. I'm showing you no mercy. You're going
Yes.
to jail right away.
Do you know
Oh my
what?
God,
I
yes.
remember that. So to our listeners, Stan and my dad worked in for the same company, not necessarily on this. There was no overlap, I don't believe, in what he was doing and what you were doing. It was as you mentioned, it was a huge company, locations all over North America. But
Or over the
I
world.
remember, yeah, all over the world. I remember my dad coming home and telling stories about, like, I think there was a few of them that got in trouble. It wasn't just that one. I think there was like a handful of guys at the same time
Right.
who got, who got nabbed
Oh.
and were in federal prison for,
And
A little bit of club fed
Oh,
never killed anyone.
And of course, he was also having an affair with his stockbroker who was doing all this stuff with him.
naturally.
Right. And his wife did not know about the affair until he was arrested.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
it all
I
came out
vaguely
publicly.
remember my dad telling me about this, but it didn't directly affect him. Like, were these people, this was in your direct leadership line?
No, this was not in my direct leadership line, but he was a very, very powerful executive who was basically had oversight of almost the whole company in a certain
Okay,
area.
so then I do remember this. And there was a few people who got within the company who got jail time, I believe, right? Or am I remembering that wrong?
I mean, I'm glad the judge said that.
I
what
am
comes
too.
around, what goes around comes around, and you treat people like that, you deserve to be treated the same way. How can you ask the judge for mercy when you totally screwed thousands of people and made their life miserable? People should be held accountable for things like that.
So what happened once he was arrested and sent to Club Fed? Like, did the morale improve? Was there like an improvement in culture? Like, did it
people
go
like
upwards a little
rise
bit?
from their hospital beds and come back to work?
Yeah. People are so happy. It's like he got what he deserved.
Okay, yeah,
'Cause
I
you
mean,
wanna
listen, there is something to be said for that kind of morale booster, like ding dong, the witch is dead kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. I get that totally. How
God,
funny. How fucking funny. Okay, I love that story. Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of your good
Yeah.
experiences at this company?
Yes, because I always say that, hey, 85% of it was good and 15% was bad. And I had some, excellent managers. In fact, when I had my 25th service anniversary lunch, I did a talk called My 4 Best Managers and What I Learned from Them. And it was diverse. It featured, it was 2 men and 2 women, and one of the people was African American. So I also showed that good management and good leadership can be diverse. That men and women, people of color can all be good leaders. But one of
course.
my early good managers, he always gave me credit whenever I did anything really, really good. And at
Mhm.
times, like, we would be in meetings and having to present some data. And what he would do is he would kind of feel out what the crowd was like, the executives. And if he felt they were kind of friendly, he would say, Stan, you go ahead and pitch. But if he knew they were going to give us a hard time, he would go ahead and do the presentation.
So
And
we
one
would
time,
take one for the team. Yeah.
yeah,
That's nice.
one time I did mess up on some analysis, and I'm sitting in his office on the speakerphone, and the vice president of finance calls up and said, who made this mistake? This is the error. And instead of like blaming me like my old boss would have done, he basically said, I'm the manager of this department and I take responsibility for it.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
That
I
is
would do
amazing.
anything
That
for
is
that
like,
manager.
yeah, that's like 1 in a million. That's just like a really good fucking
But
person.
isn't it amazing when you find such a good manager, like how you would go to the ends of the earth
Yes.
for
Yeah.
them?
Second
Okay,
good
let's
manager.
hear
My
number 2
second good
then.
manager, he knew I was ready to be promoted to my first management job. And management jobs would open up, and he didn't immediately promote me into them. And he explained why, and I totally trusted him because he treated me so good. He basically said, I want to wait to promote you into a management job where I know you're going to succeed. Like, he didn't want to promote me to like a department that was in deep trouble, because as a
Right.
new manager, that would be a little bit hard. That he
It would
wanted to
set
make
you
sure,
up for failure almost.
right. So
Yeah, so he wanted
I
what was best for you.
and I trusted him because the way he treated me for the last 2 years, I knew he would do what was best for me. And so I actually worked for him for a whole nother year. And then when the right management job came out, he promoted me into it. And it was a department that, it was running pretty well. So I could learn to be a manager without have to immediately deal with a bunch of horrible issues.
Yeah, I get that. That's again, that sounds like 1 in a million. There are
And then
very few people who are like that these days.
But you know what's really great about managers like that is they really guide the way that you deliver management long term.
Yeah.
They really kind of embed in you that sense of empathy, that sense of strong leadership, that growth mindset, that, hey, pause before you talk vibe, that like really strong capacity for learning in your environment, and it stays with you for life.
And then my best manager, this is what's really good, those bad managers, I can leave them after 9 months. But then my very best manager that I had, I kept her for 6 years. And what's cool is as our department mission changed, we both pivoted. She would change her role, I would change my role. But she was just, she was superb. She really knew her stuff technically, but she also was a great people manager. And I always tell the story that there was a time where we did have to work, on a project like 60, 70 hours a week for about 6 weeks. It was during that
Awful.
crunch time.
That's brutal.
And she knew that this had an impact on people's families. And she knew that I was taking my spouse out for dinner for his birthday. She actually knew she knew how to contact my mother. So she called my mother to find out where I was taking Rich for his birthday.
Oh.
And then when I got there, the hostess handed us a card, and it was for Rich, and it said, Rich, thank you for hanging in there. During this time when we're really working, staying hard. I appreciate it. Drinks and dessert are on me.
I would have loved that story a million times more if she comped the whole meal, but I still love it. I still love the story, but I really want the whole meal comped for you,
Yeah,
Stan.
but that was such a sweet gesture.
No,
And
it's very rare to have a manager do that, to go that far out of their way, to contact your mom, to figure out the restaurant, all of that. Kudos to her, and kudos
she
to
was, yeah.
Rich for
And
hanging
I'm
in with
actually
you.
I'm actually still in touch with her. And I always tell her she was like the best manager I ever had. And it was kind of funny because usually a lot of times you can interview and choose your manager, but in this case there was a reorg. And it's like, okay, I'm getting a new manager. I've never heard of her. I've never met her. I'm like, oh God, here I go again, having to start all over again, proving myself, brand new manager. And we just clicked right away. She had a great
That's
style,
awesome.
which she rewarded me for my work. And then when she had to move, she brought me along with her. And it was just a great, and I got, 6 years in a row, she gave me the very top appraisal rating. So,
That's
that means
great.
got good raises and good bonuses. I got rewarded for the good work that I did.
Mhm.
And, I always fully trusted her in everything. And I would do anything. I'll go way beyond the requirements of the job if she needed me to do that because of how she treated me. That good managers are going to get the very best performance out of their people.
Right, which begs the question, why would managers ever be terrible people towards their team if exactly what you said, if good managers know, like, the morale's high, people are going to do a better job, they're going to feel better about coming into work. Why do bad managers exist?
I have even a more important question. Why do senior leaders and why do HR people tolerate bad managers and don't remove them? That's what I'm really frustrated about. They continue to exist.
Hypothetical scenario, how would you now handle a bad manager? Let's say you weren't working for yourself and you were back with what's his name, Harps.
Hold on. We just had an episode recently where we were talking about mouth herpes. Is just our podcast become like a breeding ground for herpes?
Well, we're saying Harp, not Herp. But
his name was Harp, but we called him Herpes, kind of in fun. That was in the mid 80s when herpes was like the big disease.
What would you do differently, knowing what you know now, having had these experiences? What would you do differently if Harp the Herp was your boss?
Oh gosh. I think one would be just a direct approach, and saying, let's have a discussion. And, you're hoping people like this will listen, but say, this is how I'm feeling. And I actually had to do this I'm working like as a vendor for a company, and I basically had to send her an email last week. But instead of like saying, you do this and you do that, is sit down and say, this is how I'm feeling, and use I phrases in terms of, that, I feel that I feel like my work's not being appreciated. I feel like I'm not getting credit for the good things that I do, and I'm getting blamed for things that I don't do, and trying to make it so I'm not really attacking you, but I'm explaining how I'm feeling, hoping that you will adjust your management style and see that you're causing these things to happen.
Causing distress within me.
Right. And then if they don't listen and things don't get better, I could talk to their manager and say, listen, I'm really having issues with, Harpies. That first story I told, when I went to her manager, she basically said, if you're not happy, leave. She didn't even want to address
that's always the risk that you run, right? For speaking out, for, speaking out in general against anyone in a management position. If you're not, if you're a direct report, I feel like that's always the risk you run, that they'll be like, there's the door, you could use it at any point, not. So I feel like that, especially in America where you're basically at will, like you could be fired for no reason. You could be disguised as a layoff, so I feel like it's that was probably not a strange response, especially for the time. Like, if you don't like it, you could leave, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I like what you're saying about you go to someone and say, this is how I'm feeling. I think that's actually imago therapy. You say, like, I feel XYZ, and then technically the other person in imago therapy would say, okay, what I'm hearing is you feel XYZ when ABC happens, right? So that there's like a mirroring of what you're saying. But
And like processing the information.
yeah, but I like, I'm thinking about the bosses I've had, and I don't think any of the toxic bosses I've had over my career, I don't think any of them were emotionally evolved enough to be like, I hear what you're saying and you're not wrong. Let's tackle this problem together.
Yeah.
I
And
don't
actually
think
with it, and the case I'm undergoing now, where I have emailed this person, I don't even need them to do anything. I just want her to say, I heard you, I understand.
right.
Instead of arguing with me, what I'm afraid is when we get together, she's going to pick apart everything I said and try to defend or tell me where I'm wrong. And that's
So
just
what
going to
would
make me
you
more angry.
do?
All I want to be is, okay, I heard you, I understand how you're feeling. Let's move on.
So what will you do if, when you do meet with this person, she starts doing the defensive thing? What could you do in that situation to make it go your way? Could you say, hey, so and so, I don't want to debate it. I just want you to let me know that you heard what I said and that you digested it.
Oh, this is very cavalier, but again, given my age and and I know most people don't have the ability to do this, but if she says that to me, I don't need this.
So
I
if
don't need
she's
this in
getting
my life.
defensive and being kind of like, you're wrong because of XYZ, you're just gonna
Right.
walk.
Yes. And see, that I feel bad for those people that can't. And like, if the thing is, what you might do is, even before you approach your toxic boss, is maybe hold off a little while and kind of have a backup plan. Like, maybe start getting your fingers out there and seeing what other opportunities exist.
Yeah, have
And
your
be in a
resume on
position-
deck. Yeah.
Right. Or get a few.
Wasn't
get a
that what
few
Dr.
interviews
Amber
lined
said
up.
as well?
Oh wait,
'Cause
yes,
Dr. Amber said, always have your shit together.
So
Right.
meaning have your resume completely up to date at all times, so that if you're not someone like Stan, who doesn't necessarily need this gig because they've worked in corporate America for however many
Long.
years,
Forever.
their mortgage has been fucking paid off. I hate you, Stan. So jealous. Have your resume ready to go at any given time.
But we all raise a good point with this discussion, is that, if you're going to have the discussion with the boss, there might be some risk, and you need to be ready at what the ramifications might be. The boss might just say, hey, then just leave, or, hey, you're fired. And you better have a backup plan for what you're going to do, or savings
That's a
to
really
last
good
for
point.
a while, or the
So-
next job you're going to go to.
I'm curious. I think as we start kind of wrapping up and kind of getting to the end of the story, I'm curious to know, if you had to go back in time, what are some of the key lessons you would impart to people that may be experiencing something similar?
First of all, I would say maybe even address it sooner. That if you asked about red flags. If you see red flags, don't let it happen 1, 2, 3, 4 times before speaking out. Maybe try to speak up a little bit sooner. The second thing that really helped is have someone to vent to, instead of like either holding it in or exploding at work. When I had that really bad manager in my first story, I would come home from work every day with steam coming out of my ears, and Rich would say, okay, what did she do to you today? And of course I would upload. And so having somebody you just vent to can make you feel better. And then
Yeah.
also maybe even get, maybe like a mentor or like a seasoned professional or a career coach who can help you navigate through it. Because sometimes when you're going through experiences like this, it kind of freezes you up and you get into a space where I don't know how to handle this. So having like a mentor or a coach who might be able to see things that you don't see can maybe
Yeah.
help you navigate how to go through situations like this.
Yeah.
I think that's been a lot of people's request, that they want a mentor, but they're not necessarily given one when they
Well, you,
express the want to have one. I wonder why
But- and it-
companies
it's
don't do
it's up
that.
to you to find a mentor, though. It's usually up to the mentee to go and go find a mentor. And just
That's
find
true.
find a professional that you respect or someone who's gone through this and say, or someone who's like really level-headed, who has like a different skills than you have, and say, hey, I would like you to be my mentor. And actually most people are kind of flattered. It makes them feel good that somebody else comes to them and says, hey, I want you to be my mentor.
Right.
Or even, I think as a good leader, if your employee has indicated that they're interested in having a mentor, I think it's really important for you to open up your network to your employee, especially if they're an employee that has got a growth mindset, that they're interested in learning and developing themselves. If you open up your network to them, they're learning the opportunity to network, and they're not specifically using you as the mentor, but they can tap into people that have got the experience to help guide them.
And unfortunately, the kind of managers we talked about are probably
the bad
not
ones
do
don't do that. Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because the moment that I mentioned before, where we've been hearing that a lot of people are requesting mentorship, they don't get anything in response because they're all in toxic workplaces.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So it's not even so much that they're responsible. They're saying, hey, I want to be coached. I want to be led. I want to learn more. And any good manager would be like, I am so here for this because it's only going to help us as a company or as a department,
our relationship,
perform better.
Yeah.
And a good company, their leadership development will say, if someone requests a mentor, we're going to find you one because we want you to grow, because that's good for the company.
So I think the onus is on both sides, right? It's like, if it's made known to your manager or your management team that you would like a mentor, either you need to find someone that they okay, or they need to help you find the right fit. So I think it's like a 50-50 onus on,
for sure.
Especially like in a company like the one you were at, which is so huge. That would be the easiest place to find a mentor at, because there's you have pick of lots of different people.
And I had a great mentor, and he really helped me get to the executive level, and it was just a really great experience.
I mean, you're lucky that you had 85% of your work experiences were great. I would say maybe 25 of my work experiences were great in my entire career.
Well, hopefully over time, the bad ones will kind of disappear a little bit. And the good ones, the good ones come up in front.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share with kind of our listeners, the audience, any kind of key takeaways you wanted to share?
When bad situations happen, just try to take a deep breath and don't react too quickly and do or say something that you might regret.
That's a big one for
me. Right. Try to get into a good space. Secondly, look for alternatives. Don't feel like you have to be stuck. Grab control. Look for a new job. You report your manager. Look for a new manager where you are. Take stock of the good assets that you have to offer someplace else. If you're not appreciated where you work, really look at what skills and assets do I have that I can take from this toxic work environment and go to a better work environment where I can thrive. So, take control of the situation and try to take some positive steps, and don't feel like you have to be stuck.
Yeah.
You have to take care of yourself.
Yes, you
Self-care
do.
is so important, especially the number of hours we spend at work. Probably after sleeping, that's the second most place we spend our time is
Yep.
working.
There it is. So Stan, thank you so much
Oh.
for coming on.
Thank you so much for your time, Stan. We really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us today. If you would like to share your story, we would love to hear from you.
Also, leaving a review helps us create more content because it shows us there's an interest in this topic.
For those of our listeners who do better with reading, we have closed caption available on YouTube.
See you next week, same time and same place.